Blasting tourists into space may soon no longer be the stuff of science fiction.
Richard Branson's space team is one step closer to bringing paying customers to space and back.
I'd love to go into space, as I think pretty well everybody watching this show would love to go to space.
The acceleration is pretty eye-watering and it's pretty instantaneous.
3, 2, 1.
Armed. Fire.
Great motor burn, everybody. We're going to space, Richard.
Well, that is $1 million view out the window.
Welcome to the club, astronaut.
I like this club.
Wow, what a video opening. That gives me goosebumps and all those spine tingles. Space, indeed, that new frontier, the final keynote speech of what has been an incredible 4 days of IBTM Wired. And I am thrilled that for this final keynote, we are joined by the brilliant Mr. Stephen Attenborough. Now, Stephen is the Chief Customer Officer for Virgin Galactic. Interestingly, Stephen was the very first employee of the company in 2004, joining as the commercial director to lay the groundwork, create the organizational frameworks, create a foundation for the company, including sales and marketing and that customer care. And really helping to build the organization into what it's become today. Now, Stephen morphed recently into a new role earlier this year and is the Chief Customer Officer now. He was originally the commercial director, but this new customer officer role is so crucial and important as Stephen now helps prepare for the commercial growth, the beginning of that commercial strategy. I'm so excited to hear more about the company and its ambitions and its plans for the future. Stephen, we're grateful that you're here with us today. I know you speak around the world at these sorts of events, inspiring people with your story, with these lofty ambitions, these audacious goals that Virgin Galactic has. I'm going to stop talking so that we can hear from you now. Over to you, Mr. Stephen Attenborough.
Thank you so much, Miriam. I was going to suggest you keep on talking, actually. You were doing so well. Let me just do the dreaded share screen and then we can get going. So just bear with me 1 second. And just put it into the right mode. Okay, success. Thank you again, Miriam. Hello, everybody from IBTM Wired. I understand you are probably all around the world, but most of you are in your afternoons rather than your mornings. So good afternoon to most of you. Good morning to a few of you. Possibly good evening to a few as well. And it is a remarkable world that we live in, not just because of the dawn of the second space age, but also because we can do these conferences in this way remotely, and it doesn't really matter where we are. And having said that, I will look forward, I think, to getting back on stage, a real stage, and seeing real people. And one of the reasons for that is that I always like to do a little bit of market research, which is going to be tough to do this morning, but I'll talk to you about it very briefly anyway, because you know, when we started Virgin Galactic in 2004, as Miriam said, I had the great privilege of joining right at the start. And as a startup, you know, we didn't have a lot of money for market research, and but we had a hunch that a lot of people wanted to go to space. So, you know, when I go around the world and give talks, whether it's to CEOs in Australia or school kids in Helsinki and everywhere in between, you know, I have always asked the question, two questions actually. The first is that how many people, you know, if forget about the price at the moment and assume that everything is safe, how many people would like to experience space for themselves, to become an astronaut? And, you know, it's always about, you know, most of the room, and hands shoot up. And as I say, it doesn't matter where you are and who you're talking to. And then the second question is, how many people actually expect to become an astronaut? And you're very fortunate if anybody in the room puts their hands up. And I sort of love that, because that is exactly why we're here. And so I'm very excited to tell you right up front this morning that we are standing at the dawn of a new space age. And the exciting thing about that space age is that it's going to be characterized by vehicles, spaceships, if you like, that are built and operated by private companies, not by governments. And those spaceships will be reusable, they will be safe, and they are going to transform our business and our personal lives. And that, I think, is remarkable. And the most remarkable thing about it is that if you put your hand up virtually just now to wanting to become an astronaut, I think you'll be able to do so. And I think by, in a couple of decades' time, this is going to be pretty commonplace. And the most exciting thing for me is that Virgin Galactic, the company that I have worked for a very long time and helped to start, I think is at the vanguard of that new space age. And I've started with this slide for a long time. It's a nice picture, and we'll be talking a lot more about what it's actually showing as we go through the presentation this morning. And it has a little tagline that we use, which has a bit of a pun in it. Space is virgin territory, and we like that. And but it clearly shows a spaceship, I guess, sitting firmly on the ground and not into space. And so that's all very well. It's great to have a spaceship, but you can't say that space is virgin territory or that we are a spaceline unless you take that thing to space. So after many years of research and development and innovation and engineering and testing, we had good days and we had bad days. It was fantastic back in December 2018 to use that same strapline, but with a picture which showed our spaceship firmly into space. And that was because that was the very first time that a crewed vehicle that was built for commercial service had put humans into space. And we, of course, could not be more excited that that first crewed vehicle happened to belong and be operated by Virgin Galactic. And incidentally, it was the first crewed space launch from US soil since 2011 when that happened. So it was a pretty remarkable day. And of course, a lot of things happened after that first flight. Our pilots were awarded FAA commercial astronaut wings. You can see there one of the pilots from the flight alongside Richard Branson at the US Department of Transportation, getting those wings pinned on, which is a pretty exciting moment. The rocket motor that powered that flight, powered the spaceship up into space for the first time for us, is now in the Smithsonian Museum in Washington, D.C. If we're ever allowed into America again, do make sure that you go and see it. It's a wonderful museum and it's a great rocket motor as well. And then, having looked at all the data, which we always do from every test flight, there's a lot of data analysis. Safety always is our North Star. We inspect the vehicles thoroughly. We liked what we saw. We really liked what we saw. The space flight had gone exceptionally well. And so about 8 to 10 weeks later, we were able to turn that spaceship around and do it all over again. So we took our two pilots, took our spaceship into space. We went a little bit higher, we went a little bit faster, so incremental test flight program. But for the first time, and this was really significant, we had somebody in the back. And it's the people in the back of the spaceship, which is what this company is all about. That person worked for Virgin Galactic. We were particularly delighted, I think, that person was a she rather than a he, because the space age has been dominated by males, I'm afraid, but we're looking to change that. And that's Beth Moses, our chief astronaut trainer. So you can see there a pretty fab photo, actually. 2 pilots, one looking out the window on the right-hand side there, and Beth just floating gently in the cabin, effectively upside down, although there's no right way up or wrong way up in space. And again, breaking lots of records. As we landed that spaceship from that fantastic space flight in 2019, there was a Scottish piper on the ground, and the reason for that was one of our pilots, Dave Mackay, with the Champagne, became Scotland's very first astronaut. Dave is, as I say, our chief pilot from a fantastic corps of incredibly experienced space pilots that we have on our payroll. Dave came from the RAF in the UK. As an amazing test pilot. He joined Virgin Atlantic after he retired from the RAF, and then we persuaded him to come and fly spaceships. He didn't need a lot of persuasion, to be honest. So again, another really big day. And having proven that that vehicle could do what we built it to do, which was to take people safely into space and bring them back again, having had a remarkable experience, a lot of things started to happen. And that is, as Miriam was saying earlier, that sort of laying the foundations, getting really prepared to open space to everybody, to start to take our first customers on this transformational journey. So you see here one of the events we had. This is the unveil of the spacesuits that everybody's going to wear when they take a ride with Virgin Galactic. A lot of practical, logistical, safety issues go into those spacesuits. They were made for us by our friends at Under Armour. But of course, one of the principal objectives is that if you're going to go to space, you're going to get a lot of photographs taken of you. So it's important that you look great as well as comfortable and safe. We revealed the interior of our spaceship. That was just last year, ready again to take our first customers into space. So a beautiful interior, I think, which really maximizes that customer experience, which we'll talk about in more detail in a moment. We actually also decided to become the first publicly listed human spaceflight company, and so that was with a listing on New York Stock Exchange a few months later. And that was important because what we're doing here is to democratize space, and we want everybody to have an opportunity to be a part of this journey. And that's whether at the apex, if you like, you're a customer who actually flies to space, or a brand fan who just loves what we're doing and wants to engage with it online or in other ways, or indeed an investor who wants to be a part of the financial growth of what we think is going to become an incredibly exciting new sector. And we have big ambitions. We are not just looking to take a few people to space. We're looking to take thousands of people to space. And like an airline, you don't build that with one aircraft. So a little earlier again this year, we revealed, or rolled out, I should say, our second spaceship. This spaceship is called VSS Imagine, and it is the start of a fleet of spaceships that are going to be operating very frequently and taking people to space on a frequent basis. We also moved our team down from where we were doing our test flights and building the vehicles and doing our R&D in Mojave in California, and we moved them down to this beautiful, unique, awe-inspiring facility that we call Spaceport America, which is in New Mexico in the United States. Spaceport America is the world's first purpose-built commercial spaceport. It was designed by Foster & Partners, and it is just an incredibly fitting location, a fitting facility, a fitting design for you to kick off your transformational journey into space and to come back as an astronaut. So that is now our working, breathing, living Virgin Galactic headquarters sitting out in the New Mexico desert. And then, as some of you may have seen, just 2 or 3 weeks ago, or maybe a little bit more than that, maybe a month ago, on the 22nd of May, we operated our third full space test flight. And that was the first test flight that we had done from Spaceport America in New Mexico. We called that our Unity 21 flight. It was a beautiful flight, actually. We were testing a few new improvements to the spaceship. And importantly, we were also ticking off during that flight the last couple of items that we had to prove to our regulators, the Federal Aviation Administration in the US, to get our full passenger license. And so excitingly, just last week, the FAA announced that we are now cleared to fly people like you and me from a regulatory perspective. So we're not quite finished our test flight program now, but the license is there. It's sitting ready and new. And as I say, that will enable us to from a regulatory perspective, to fly our passengers. So a lot of stuff is happening right now. And there's a lot more to come this year. And things are really motoring. But I just actually want to take a step back, having sort of updated you as to what we're doing and how we're doing. I want to talk a little bit about why we're doing it. And as I said, and Miriam said at the beginning, I was privileged to be here right from the start. And I knew Virgin. I grew up with Virgin. I loved the brand. I thought Richard was a pretty cool guy. He was a natural disruptor, and there were a lot of companies in the UK that were growing as I grew up. That were just doing things differently, and they had that Virgin badge on them. And so when I got the opportunity to go and do something for this brand, I sort of jumped at it, really. But I went in not really understanding why Virgin, having run successful airlines and many other businesses, would want to take on space. And so I went to see Richard for the first time, when I had been working for Virgin just for a couple of weeks. And we sat down over a cup of tea in Notting Hill in London. And he said, okay, let me tell you why we're doing this. And the first thing is that we love a challenge at Virgin. He said, I went into business not to do things the same way, but to do things differently, to make customer lives happier. And he said, everywhere I look around me, there are businesses which have got lazy and complacent. It is, and where we think there is an opportunity to shake things up, to bring a bit of the Virgin style and flair, and to try and make customers' lives happier, we give it a go. Sometimes we're successful, sometimes we're not. And so I said, that sounds fantastic. Absolutely understand it. How does it apply to space? And so he said, well, as a kid, I watched the moon landings, or a young man, I watched the moon landings. And in 1969, it absolutely transformed me. And, as I watched those amazing pictures with my mum and dad, I really wanted to become an astronaut. And he said all my friends did as well, and people all over the world did as well. It was a transformative moment. And he said our parents at that time were telling us that the pace of change that's happened with space exploration during the 1960s, which has resulted in 2 men standing on the moon, will mean that anybody can go to space by 1965 or 1985, sorry, maybe a couple of decades time. And he said as those years went past, it became evident that was not going to happen. Space just became more and more exclusive. It was the preserve of government agencies who were really not interested in taking people like you and me to space. And he said, but my hunch is that there is still that universal fascination with human spaceflight. So people want to go and they're not being allowed to go. And that is exactly the sort of business that we love doing something about at Virgin. And he said, just to illustrate the point, although there are probably billions of people on this planet who would love to have the spaceflight experience, to date, fewer than 600 people have actually been allowed to do so. So what better example of a business that needs shaking up, needs democratizing, needs to keep that customer base happy? So I said, okay, that all makes sense. It sounds pretty challenging, but it makes sense. And he said the other thing is, and the other reason that I want to do this and Virgin wants to do this is because, when we launch a business, it's not just about disrupting and doing things better or trying to do things better. It is about also the legacy. How can we start this new business and run it in a way which is going to, be good for people and for planet, and is going to leave, this place better than we found it. And so I said, that again sounds good. So how does that apply to space? And he said, well, look, we all know that there are huge challenges ahead of us, and there have always been, but it's a little different now because, these challenges are now on a global scale. And unfortunately, there is no silver bullet. There is no switch that we can flick, which is going to make them all right. However, he said, there is a real recognition, certainly within Virgin and other places around the world, that space is really going to matter. And he said that if we look at our lives right now, the fact that we have had limited access to space in the last 50 or 60 years has actually already transformed our lives. The way that we communicate, the way that we navigate, the way that we forecast weather, the way that we know what's going on in the galaxy and the cosmos, of which we're a part, has been improved dramatically, by the fact that we have had access to space. But he said the trouble is that access to space is still very limited, and this comes to our purpose as a company, and I think also the purpose of the commercial space industry that you see growing in front of our eyes, with Blue Origin and Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk and SpaceX, Virgin Galactic and Richard Branson. All those entrepreneurs and all those companies are essentially doing this for the same reason. They're approaching it in different ways with different vehicles. They're attacking different markets. But I think if you said to those three incredible entrepreneurs, why are you doing this? They would say, because we want to transform that narrow pathway that exists at the moment from the Earth to space into a broad highway. We want it to be a highway that effectively anybody can walk on safely and easily, because only by changing that dynamic can we fully reap the benefits that the world outside our world holds for us. And that, I think, is just so exciting. And, the irony is that we actually go to space to look back on the Earth. We go to space to make the Earth better. And that, I think, is the focus of the commercial space industry. And we're seeing it happen right now. And the next decades are going to be incredible. And we sum that up as together we open space and we do it to change the world for good. That is our purpose statement. And each word of those, or each part of that phrase, is really important. And the together part is super important. And, because you can't do space on your own. Space is definitely challenging. You need a certain audacity to take it on. You're going to need to be patient, and you're going to be determined. But you also need to make a decision at some point that you're just going to do it. And that's what Virgin did. They didn't do it blindly. We had some fantastic prototype technology that we believed could be commercialized into something safe and commercially viable. But at some point, we had that moment at Virgin we called screw it, let's do it, which is let's just give this a go. And we did that in 2004. And I think, first of all, right from the start, we recognized we needed the best people on board. That together was really important. And one of the things I was asked to do right at the start, because we knew there were a lot of risks ahead of us, some of them we just going to have to wait. There's nothing really we could do about mitigating those risks up front. But there were a few that we could go out and do something about up front. And one of those was just making sure that there was a readily available market for our product whenever it was delivered at a commercially sensible price. And so in 2004, with some prototype technology licensed and proven, we went out to the world and said, look, we're going to give this a go. And we don't know what the product is going to look like. We don't know when it's going to be delivered. We don't know who will be eligible to fly. In fact, we don't know very much at all, but we are going to give it our best shot. And when we do deliver it, we'll do it to the best of our Virgin ability. And if you would like to be part of this journey and make a reservation on one of our earliest seats, then send us a check for $200,000. And the remarkable thing is that people did, not because they were foolish, but because they believed in our mission. They believed that it was important that this industry took hold, and that they knew the importance to all new businesses, of that proof of market. So we built up this incredible community, which we call our Future Astronaut community, which started, as I say, as a proof of market, and has ended up in being an incredibly valuable part of our overall proposition. They have been amazing ambassadors in good times and bad. They have enabled us to build a product which I think will be as good as it possibly can be from a consumer point of perspective from day one. I would recommend that any of you who may be thinking about starting businesses in the future, if you haven't done already, that early customer base, nurture it, encourage it, bring it into the tent with you, because it is incredibly important, not just to the survival and success of the business, but of really making sure that you get things right from day one. So that Future Astronaut community now is a living, breathing, amazing animal. We have 600 future astronauts from 60 countries around the world. They engage, they collaborate, they do business together, they go on holiday together, they come and see everything we do together. And that is something now which we will continue with, because I think it's a really important part of this customer journey. We even have a Astronaut Edition Range Rover, which is only available to those who have a ticket with Virgin Galactic. Another bit about it together, I talked about Spaceport America, and that was a remarkable collaboration as well with a very entrepreneurial governor, Bill Richardson, back in 2005. He said, look, to Richard Branson, he said, look, if you bring me a spaceline, I'll build you a spaceport. And Richard said, well, if you build me a spaceport, I'll bring you a spaceline. They shook hands on it. At the time, the desert was empty. Just a couple of years later, it had a remarkable spaceport on it. Back in May, of course, we were able for the first time to repay that confidence, I suppose, that Bill Richardson and the state of New Mexico gave us by flying our spaceship with the New Mexico flag on the side up to space and back to New Mexico. I won't say too much more about the spaceport, but that was the opening. It is a fabulous building that I hope many of you will see, either as visitors, but preferably as astronauts. So what about the opening space? That's what it's all about. And what I would like to sort of very quickly talk about now is our vehicles and our system. And when Virgin started Virgin Atlantic, it was exactly the same aim in mind. Felt that the airline industry could do with shaking up. So Richard somehow got hold of a 747. He put Virgin on the tail, the logo on the tail, and just did things better inside the plane. And the rest is history. Space wasn't really quite as easy as that, because the vehicles, the airplane equivalents in the space industry really hadn't changed much for the last half century or so. And although they are functional and they have done quite a remarkable job of opening space to the extent that it has been opened, they are not vehicles that you would put your customers on. So we needed something which was going to be reusable for a start. We needed something that was going to be safer by design, and something that was going to give a remarkable customer experience, a repeatable customer experience to everybody that bought a ticket and climbed on board. This is a chart which shows our flight profile, and I won't go through it all in detail, but a couple of things I will point out to you. And the first thing is that we do not launch our space rockets vertically from the ground. We have pilots. They're not autonomous vehicles. And we actually have two parts of our space system. And the first is an aircraft, a carrier aircraft or mothership, which takes our spaceship up to 50,000 feet, and it launches our spaceship from there. The reason being that in some ways, the big explosion that you see at ground level with vertical rockets, is that enormous amount of energy that you need to propel something vertically through the thick atmosphere. Our feeling was that aircraft could do that much more safely and efficiently. And so that's the way we get up to the where the atmosphere is thin, and we launch our spaceship from that altitude. Just give me 1 second for a quick. So having launched at altitude, our spaceship very efficiently with a fairly minimal amount of energy really compared to big rockets takes itself into space. I'll talk about that in a second. The other thing I want to point out is how we come back. Because getting back into the Earth's atmosphere in a vehicle that you want to use many, many times, you need to do it obviously safely every time. It's quite a challenge. And the designer of this vehicle came up with something which I think is often at the heart of the best innovations, which was actually very simple. But it was also brilliant. And so he took as his inspiration the shuttlecock or birdie that you play badminton with. And in space, we effectively make our spaceship into a shuttlecock by rotating its wings upwards to 60 degrees to the fuselage. As gravity brings that spaceship down, just like a shuttlecock, it will always come down in the right attitude, so belly first. The pilots don't need to fly that, it's done aerodynamically. And also those feathers, those wings, rotated wings, act as giant air brakes effectively. So the spaceship is slowed really powerfully and aerodynamically until it can go back into an aircraft design again. So the wings come back down at about 60, 70,000 feet, and then you've got a lovely glide back down to the spaceport. So I'll talk more about that experience inside, but that was the basic design. So it meant we needed to build two vehicles, not one. The first is our carrier aircraft, the world's largest all-composite aircraft in service today. It has that twin fuselage catamaran design, which means the spaceship can be hung easily between the two fuselages there. And it is an aircraft which is a joy to fly. I hear it's flown many, many times. It has an incredible capability for carrying heavy altitude up to high payload, very strong, very powerful, but also very sustainable because it's very light because it's made out of carbon composite materials. And then the second part of our system, of course, is the spaceship itself. That's where you'll be sitting. This is VSS Unity, the spaceship that we're flying right now. It's the world's first private crewed spacecraft, which has been built for commercial service. It's been into space 3 times now. And although it looks maybe a little bit like an executive jet or something, it's very beautiful. It's very simple on the outside. This spaceship has got to do a lot of things that have never been done before in one vehicle. So it needs to be taken up to altitude, attached to an aircraft. It needs to be a Mach 3 rocket plane, so supersonic. It needs to be a spacecraft, capable of surviving and thriving in the vacuum of space. It needs to be a reusable re-entry vehicle coming back into the Earth's atmosphere, and it also needs to be able to be a high altitude glider. So there's a lot of things that are packed into that beautiful spaceship, which is why we have tested and tested and tested until we can say hand on heart to our customers that we are now ready to fly you safely. So what is the experience going to be like of flying to space with Virgin Galactic? Well, you're going to arrive a few days before your space flight, and you're going to arrive with your friends and family. This is a life event, and you should not have to experience it on your own unless you want to. But I think most people want to bring their nearest and dearest. So this is something that you'll be training and preparing to some extent, in company of those that are closest to you. And we will make sure that you are prepared in body, mind, and soul for a trip which is going to change you. It's going to transform you. It's going to, in some ways, define your life from the moment that you land. And on day 4 of that training, it will be space flight day. You'll get up early. You'll come out to the spaceport with your fellow crew. You'll know them well by then. You'll get your last-minute medical checks up on the astronaut floor. You'll be donning your Under Armour spacesuit, which has been tailored to you, and you can take home afterwards, by the way. And then you'll descend in the elevator to the astronaut walkway. You'll walk out onto the runway where there'll be a small fleet of Range Rovers waiting to take you out to the spaceship. The spaceship will be waiting at the end of the runway. It'll be fully fueled. The pilots will be on board and will be ready to go. You'll climb on board, sit in the seat. You'll be very familiar with that seat by then. Our crew will help you buckle in. The door will close. The pilots will turn around and say, "We're ready to go." We all say yes. And as the sun rises over the mountains of New Mexico, you'll have a fairly traditional takeoff. You'll taxi and then accelerate down the runway and climb away from the spaceship in a way which feels fairly familiar. So that first stage of the spaceflight is something which will enable you to acclimatize and to get ready for what comes ahead. Now, the photographs I've taken for this actually come from the space flight that I told you about, which had Beth Moses, our chief escrow trainer, on board. So I was able to take a little snap of her face in each stage of our space flight to tell you a little bit about how you as a customer might be feeling. And during this phase of flight, you can see out of the window the spaceship as well as the mothership. She was relaxed. She was smiling. She was chatting to the pilots. She had some jobs to do, so she was also busy. But this was a very gentle introduction to the spaceflight. And I think, when you and I sit on that spaceship, we will be preparing for what comes ahead. We will be rehearsing in our own minds what we've been taught. We'll be chatting to our crew. It is that period of preparation. But, at about 46, 47,000 feet, the last checks will be done on the spaceship. Mission control will go through everything with the pilots, and they will confirm that we are now ready for spaceflight. Your pilots in the spaceship will turn around to you and they'll say, okay, is everybody set to go? Again, there will be thumbs up from everybody. And then the pilots in the carrier aircraft will push a button and the spaceship flies free from the mothership. What is that like? Well, it's an interesting feeling. It's not dramatic. It's a little bit like going over the top of a roller coaster, so a little sinking feeling in your stomach, but it's also smooth. And you're also, you're away from the jet engines of the carrier aircraft, so it is a lot quieter as well. So a nice little introduction, but very rapidly, things change in that cabin. So from gliding for maybe 140, 150 knots, the rocket motor fires behind your head, and the spaceship immediately accelerates at about 3 Gs. So that's 3 gravitational forces. You're pressed back in your seat. And that is a rapid onset. And there is just a surge of energy that comes from that rocket motor, which goes through the spaceship and goes through you, presses you back into your seat. Our 0 to 60 miles an hour time equivalent is about a second. That's just to give you an indication. And we keep accelerating at that rate. So after 6 or 7 seconds, we go through the transonic region, as we call it. So you break the sound barrier. You are at the speed of sound. And as we get to the speed of sound, from traveling straight forwards, the pilots pull the nose up into a vertical climb. And you keep accelerating up to just over 3 times the speed of sound. You're pressed back in your seat. You are literally hurtling away from the surface of the Earth in an incredibly thrilling rocket ride. And outside the window, you will notice that the sky is turning from blue through to a purple and eventually to an inky black as we escape the Earth's atmosphere and enter space. And that was Beth's face, which I think said it all, as she enjoyed that amazing rocket ride into space. Now, when the rocket motor shuts down, which it does after about a minute of burn, the world inside your cabin again changes dramatically. From weighing 3 times what you normally weigh, you weigh absolutely nothing at all. And at that point, you can just undo your seatbelt, put one finger on the side of your seat, and you'll float up into this big spaceship cabin. The pilots are able actually to position the spaceship exactly as they want it in space. And what they will do is to make sure that the windows are pointing back at Earth. And so you can float to one of the 17 windows in this big spaceship cabin, in the silence of space, in the joy of zero gravity. And you can just drink in this view. And this is the apex, this is the apogee of this experience. And, we know when astronauts come back from space, they don't talk about an experience for a week or a month or a year. They talk about it for the rest of their lives. And they talk about it in a way which is clear that there has been a cognitive shift, that they have understood the nature of life and the nature of our planet in a different way because of this changed perspective. And they come back wanting to do something about it. They want to come back and share it, to explain to people the fragility and the beauty of the planet, and the fact that this is a spaceship, and there are 2 spaceships here. There's one you're sitting on and one that you're looking at. And this is our opportunity as a company, and this is the thing that excites me more than anything else, of being able to give people this gift of spaceflight and then enabling them to do something about it. So there you are, you're drinking in this transformative view, you're having that moment of self-actualization and realization, but it doesn't go on forever because gravity is out there and it is pulling our spaceship back to Earth. That, of course, is Beth looking out of the window for the first time. And you can tell that, you know, despite having thought about space for most of her life, what she saw out of the window just blew her away. So you go through re-entry, a high-level dynamic glide from 70,000 feet, a grease landing on that long runway of Spaceport America, and then, of course, the debrief, the astronaut wings, the reunion with your friends and family, and then you will, you know, you'll celebrate, but you will also enter what we call our alumni, future astronaut or astronaut community. And that, as I say, is where we will support you and give you the means, facilitate, you know, whatever it is that you want to do with that spaceflight experience in terms of inspiring others and really explaining what you saw from that new planetary perspective. So what about changing the world for good? Well, that is what we're here ultimately to do. And I go right back, I guess, to that beautiful photograph and the photographs that we've become accustomed to in some ways of you know, the extraordinary experience of spaceflight. And as I say, you know, by opening space to everyone eventually, by transforming this narrow footpath to a broad highway, you know, we really believe that not only will we be able to materially help this planet deal with some of its biggest challenges, but we can also give, I hope, tens of thousands in time of people from around the world this experience, which has only been available to the few, and that then we will help people build off this experience to share it and to inspire others. So that is what I wanted to talk to you about this morning. It is a fantastic journey. Keep your eyes peeled on Virgin Galactic social platforms because there's a lot happening out there, not just for Galactic, but the rest of the commercial space world. This is going to be an exciting year. But the best thing about it is that this is relevant to you and me. You know, this is not space for somebody else. It is space for us. So thank you very much. I'm going to now hand back to Miriam, and I hope we have a few questions and answers and possibly time for a little movie.
Well, stay with me, Stephen. Please don't just hand back and disappear into space. That would be terrible, because we're definitely having some questions through now. And you finished on that lovely purpose, that enabling something for good for the masses. Lots of questions coming through about affordability. Is this going to be accessible and affordable for me, for our audience, for the average person on the street?
Yes, is the answer to that. But you know, we do also have to start at a point which recognises the costs of doing this. And so, like any other business, we want a lot of customers, but we are only going to be able to achieve that aim if we operate in a commercially successful way. So, our ticket prices, as many of you out there may know, have been previously set at $250,000 US. Now, to put that in context, there have been a few people who have traveled with the Russians as private individuals to the space station, and they have paid, you know, upwards of 20 million and quite a lot more in some ways. So this is a very good start.
And perhaps as demand increases, costs will come down as well, and the operation grows.
Exactly, Miriam. You know, and if we're successful, we're going to see competition, we're going to see economies of scale, we're going to see all those market forces, which will bring down prices and increase availability. So our aim is absolutely to make this affordable for as many people that want to do it. It's going to take a little time to get there.
How long are you actually in space? And one person's asking, do you orbit the entire Earth?
So really good questions. It's half flight. It lasts about 1.5 hours. It is technically, for those that are interested, called a suborbital flight. So that was like the flight that Blue Origin are also going to be offering. It's the flight that Alan Shepard did as the first American in space. And so this is a flight which blasts straight into space and then come back down again. So it gives you that whole astronaut experience of the rocket ride, the out-of-seat zero gravity, the silence of space, the beautiful views of the Earth, the astronaut wings. But it does so in a way which is a good first step, because it means that it is broadly affordable. We also believe we can do it safely and repeatably. Orbital, of course, is where you can spend, an orbital flight is where you can spend a lot longer in space, which would be amazing, at some stage. That's what the astronauts on the International Space Station do, of course. To do that, you need a lot more energy. So you need to achieve an orbital velocity or speed, which takes a lot more energy, which involves a lot more spend, and also, of course, there are a lot of challenges with having customers in space for a prolonged period of time. From a physical perspective that do not apply if you pop your head up into space and then come back down again. So, we would love to get there eventually, but I think this is an amazing first step. And as in terms of the out of seat zero gravity, you've got several minutes of that. So you've got plenty of time really to understand what it's about.
Sounds amazing. Have you got your flight booked, Stephen?
Well, what I didn't say actually in that first conversation where Richard was telling me, why we were doing that, he also, he said, I think you should come along and help us. But he also said, and if you do, I'll make sure you fly to space. I don't know whether he remembers that conversation or not. So
I think we need to campaign to make sure that he does. And it's funny because it's circularity at IBTM Wired.
Well, by all means, drop him a line.
Yes, we will. And our first keynote speaker from yesterday, actually his moonshot goal was to be an astronaut. He is a rocket scientist. So, maybe you've got someone else you can enroll in your program. And all of us too, because I'm definitely signing up. I think it sounds absolutely incredible. Fantastic. Stephen, just to close, there are so many parallels with what you've shared and sort of our big ambitions for our own industries and what we can see. Do you have some personal learnings from your many years, so from 2004 to now? Is there one thing that's got you this far? Is there an attribute, a skill, something that you've kind of adopted or had to learn that you would say, if we can all think about that, then that'll give us the push into our own space frontiers?
Oh, wow, that was an unexpected question. But
sorry.
No, it's a great question. Hopefully I can come up with a great answer. I mean, this has been the most incredible journey. I'm hugely privileged to have been a part of it. And so there is a ton of stuff. I mean, I mentioned this customer community, which is something I guess personally I'm extremely proud of, because I was very involved in establishing that and now running it. And I think it's become and from a business perspective, I think it's been crucial actually, but I would say that let's take a slightly higher level answer than that. And I would say that when you start off on a journey which is challenging but worthwhile, which has a really strong sense of purpose behind it, it is absolutely amazing, the quality, the tenacity, the determination of people who will join you on that journey. So I would, I'm not sure whether I'll go anywhere after Virgin Galactic, but if I did, the fundamental point to me would be, has this journey got a purpose? Has this company got a purpose? Because it is such a virtuous circle. It works well for the people you're employing, it works well for your partners, and it works particularly well for your customers. And I think increasingly so. So purpose would be my one word answer.
And what a phenomenally brilliant unscripted answer that was. So I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but I'm glad we gained that extra nugget of your wisdom and experience. Thank you so much for being with us here today. That is it, everybody. That's a wrap from our final day at IBTM Wired. I think, Stephen, you've sent us off into this next part of all of our journeys with that screw it, let's do it Virgin attitude, which is absolutely fantastic. And as if that wasn't hair-raising, thrilling enough, I would love to leave you all just for the final few moments of IBTM Wired, as well as saying a huge thank you to you, Stephen, with this glorious video, Letter to My Grandchildren. Thank you so much. We'll see you again soon.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Miriam.
A letter to my grandchildren. My dad, your great-granddad, was an extraordinary man, full of wise words. He would often remind me that life is wonderful, and it is that simple truth which has driven me as I built businesses, raised my family, and embarked upon my many adventures. You are at the very start of life. It is an incredible gift, and it is there for the taking. It will deliver highs and lows, but by living it to the full, by always trying to do the right thing, and by keeping a childlike sense of adventure, it will indeed be wonderful. I used to think of space as a destination, but I now realize it's a journey with some amazing milestones along the way. Your lives will be transformed by space, and it will give your generation the planetary perspective on which the future of humanity rests. That we're all in this together, fellow travelers on Spaceship Earth. Today we pass the most significant of them all, as our beautiful VSS Unity, along with the hopes and dreams of so many, became the first spaceship built for regular passenger service to put humans into space.
Five, 3, 2, 1. Release, release, release. Fire, fire.
Good control. "55 seconds. 58 seconds. Motor shutdown. Mach 2.8.
Right motor burn, everybody. We're going to space, Richard.
264,000 feet. Welcome to space, Unity.
The view is incredible. Check that out, we can see Mexico.
Spaceship Unity, welcome to space.
Copy, base. $1 million view.
At the G.
Virgin Galactic has shown that when you set off on challenging but important adventures, exceptional people come forward to join the journey. People who are consistently by your side and on your side. People who share your dreams and people who help make them reality.
Rolling to the right.
Complete.
As I watch Unity and her brave pilots soar upwards into space today, my vision blurred by tears, I could hear your great-granddad whisper once again in my ear. Life is indeed wonderful.